Hey guys, welcome to the stream tonight. This is the Moog Source from 1981 and the FORMANTA POLIVOKS from 1982. So these are two really incredible vintage analog monosynths, and what really sets these apart, sorry for the crackling on this microphone, I don't know how I'm going to handle fixing this, so I apologize in ahead of time, but these synths are both really great fully analog monosynths from the 80s, the early 80s, ahead of MIDI. And whoa, I'm gonna throw this thing into the fucking river. Something I want to say too before we get going is it's my birthday this week, and as such, I'm giving away all of my preset libraries, which is one preset library, my vintage drum sample pack, Diodes and Rust, Inktomi, my chorus and reverb plugin, as well as t-shirts. There are Vulture Culture t-shirts. All of that is 50% off on my website right now for this week only. Use the code BIRTHDAY in all caps. Links in the description of this video. Try to remember to remind people to check that out a couple of times. But anyways, both of these synths are super cool. I can just pull up this preset I made earlier, which should just be a sawtooth. And over here, let me just make sure I have that all the way down. Yep. On the POLIVOKS, it takes a couple more steps because the POLIVOKS does not have preset memory. The Moog Source was the first Moog synthesizer to have preset memory and the second to last synthesizer they ever made. But it's a similar process. We can just simply drop the... you have to learn Russian to use the synth, of course. But we can just sort of set ourselves back to a pretty simple sound here, just by doing kind of... So you can hear that we have essentially the same pretty close to matched sawtooth sound. And that's not that surprising because the POLIVOKS was basically a Russian USSR clone of the Minimoog, but it's got a couple of features the Minimoog doesn't have, like loopable ADSRs, which is super cool. But yeah, they're both pretty incredible. And hey, Rich, welcome to the stream. How's it going? The thing is that both of these synths are very Minimoog inspired. The Source is the closest synthesizer you're going to get to a real Minimoog in terms of sound. Now, people don't always love the Dayglow color scheme, the very Miami Vice look to it. It's not exactly a classic Moog look. And the biggest thing is that it's not one knob per function, but membrane panels. But you'll see pretty quickly it's not that big of a deal to have the difference there. So anyways, why don't we do what we always do in these streams and check out the oscillators first, and then check out the filter, and then go from there exploring what sets these two synthesizers apart from each other. So the first thing to notice is the character of the sawtooth wave. Right, and then over here, kind of the same thing. They're slightly out of tune, just like a real Minimoog. This is actually hard to keep in tune across the entire key range. So if I have it in tune in the low octave, by the time I'm hitting the higher notes of the high octave, it's a little out. Oh man, that's going to be annoying. Sorry guys for the crackles. But you can hear that they're pretty close to in tune, but as we go up high, they get more out of tune. That's just sort of the nature of the thing. Thank you very much, Kev. So, as far as the sound of the oscillators, though, I mean, I think it's pretty much pretty as close as you're going to get for two synthesizers from different parts of the world, from different continents. Pretty incredible. So we've got a couple of different options too. We have a triangle wave on both of these, so all I have to do is do that. Now we have the triangle. So immediately we can hear that we have a much more clean sort of triangle sound. That is much buzzier on the top end. I wonder if that's a calibration issue, so I'm going to check the other oscillator, Rehip atop 2. No, it seems to just be the sound of the wave shaping of that sawtooth wave is got a little bit of that buzz from the sawtooth still in it as it's wave shaped down to a triangle. Let's move on over to the square wave, and we'll just go back to oscillator 1. So on the square wave on the Moog source, wow, this synth gets hot. It actually deliberately made this synth hotter as a way to get the tuning better. Because the problem with old Minimoogs is they were so temperature dependent on the tuning, and as the synth was on longer, that affects the tuning of voltage controlled oscillators. And so what's interesting is they actually just decided the best way to handle that is to make the synthesizer really hot from the beginning, and that actually fixes the tuning because it's kind of always the same really hot. Oh, sorry about that. I'll try to keep my body a little bit further to the right, so hopefully that it's not too much of a thing. How's it going, Crystal Love? Welcome to the stream. I'll just put my phone over here, maybe. Yeah, we'll do that. That way it kind of encourages me to be a little bit further away. And again, sorry for the crackling on the microphone. I really hate this. Hate this setup. But just trying to get through figuring out what's the best way to bring these streams to you. So anyways, we've got pulse width mod on the on this wave. So right around 50, of course, is going to be where it's most thick. 50% up, 50% down on the square wave. I feel like there's like a little delay on the right side. Jesus. I don't know what's causing that, but unlike sometimes when we have issues with these synths, it's not really bothering me too much in terms of the tone of the synth. If anything, the square wave can be a little bit brighter on the Moog, and so we can do pulse width mod manually. But just like on a memory Moog, there's no way to do that automatically, which is a shame that I'm aware of anyway. Someone commented on my Instagram post of tonight's stream, and they said there was a way. Maybe. As I'm aware, there's no way to modify it on a Minimoog, but you guys know synths better than me, so let me know if I'm wrong about that. Yes. Yeah, Kev, there's a lot of people that actually emulate the Polyvoks filter. Yes. So that's a that's a thing. Does sound good. And you can hear too that this wheel is not like an alpha dial on a Alpha Juno or something like that, where it's limited to 127 steps and it's really terrible. It's actually very smooth control over everything. This is a pre-MIDI synth, so they really went out of their way to make it smooth as far as the digital control goes and to be high resolution. Once MIDI came out, most synth manufacturers just went with MIDI as a 127 steps or whatever, so that's about as good as we're going to get. And that was kind of just how it went for a while, terribly, unfortunately. Oh, this mic's going to kill me. So there's no way to do pulse width mod with the Polyvoks, but we do have thinner pulse width. We have a little pulse and then a narrower pulse. So it's about 90% on this synth is about matching the pulse width over there. So real quick, why don't we go back to just 2 sawtooth waves. Here we go. Sawtooth wave over here, and I'm going to bring in oscillator 2. So now we're listening to 2 oscillators on both synths. And I think my footage is off. Doesn't it sound? I think maybe it's probably the interval here. Well, it doesn't matter for this case, but anyways, the interval is a separate control from the footage that you can use on the source to further detune. You can do fifths and stuff like that using the interval control. I think in this case they used it. So if I put these both to 32, I should be able to. See, that's, you can do fifths. Very similar sound. Wow, I hate this mic. Again, as we go up higher, we're going to have more of that issue. So, let's see. Let me catch up with the chat. There's perhaps duct tape. It's so sensitive and weird. There's not a lot I can do to hold it in place. So cheers, guys. Why don't we just cheers to technical issues? I hope it's not so bad as to make the stream unwatchable. I'll have this addressed soon. Really wasn't a problem for a long time. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's the mic or the thing or whatever. But yeah, I would definitely say, yes. Yes, I might try just leaving this kind of here and seeing, we kind of just leave it if it's happier. To get like, okay, just be cool, microphone. That might be better. Whoa. Jesus. Man. Okay. Okay, wait, they've got this mosquito sound coming in. I guess it doesn't like being there. It's too close to electronics. Jesus, Hypothesis, welcome to the stream. It's not Scum Night without technical difficulties, that's for sure. So anyways, let's go ahead and we can see that with the interval control here, we can now detune these oscillators. In this case, we have just a tune control and we can take it. So some weird places, which I suppose we could do with over here too, but. So you can see it, you can get kind of close. One thing we can do on the Polyvoks I don't think we can do is cross modulation. We might be able to. There's a couple of things kind of hidden under weird menus on this synth, which I never expect to find. But I don't see anything that seems to be cross mod on the source here. So we do have cross mod, which then as we adjust tuning and stuff. We can get sorts of timbres that wouldn't normally be necessarily good. Really sounds great. Also sounds really great. So the big difference between these two synths is going to be in the terms of the filter. So we'll just do a real quick. Now, this gets really crazy on the cutoff. It's very slow to get it all the way down. And I think there's a way to go faster with it, but it's pretty crazy how far you gotta go. They wanted it to be super smooth, which I appreciate, but it's almost like a little overkill. So, you know, it's a filter sweep. Let's do the same thing with the Polyvoks. Now, already, I think you can hear that the Polyvoks is overdriving. If I bring the oscillators back, it still kind of has that sound. Yeah, it's still pretty talky. And vowely, even though the resonance is all the way down. Could be an issue with my Polyvoks, I don't know, but it seems to already have a little resonance built in. Moving over to the source, I'm going to increase the resonance to about 50%. And we get that wonderful vowely ladder filter thing, but you can hear that we're losing a lot of volume or bass. Really great sort of vowely characteristic. If I crank that even further. The big difference here is that you're not losing that low end like you are on the source, which is good and bad. I think that Dubstation Zero has it right when he says that losing bass on a poly synth is generally kind of okay, because you don't always want your pads and everything to be so thick. We love a warm pad, but you know, sometimes you need a little bit of clarity because of every single element. If your bass, your pads, your leads all have crazy amounts of warm analog bass in them, your mix is going to sound terrible. So sometimes it's good to have a little bit of low-end loss on a poly sound, but when it comes to especially bass lines, it's kind of a bummer. And Minimoogs are so well known for making awesome bass lines that it's kind of a shame, you know, when you think about it, it's like people talk about Minimoog bass all the time. And, you know, it really isn't that bassy, is it? Why don't we take the emphasis all the way up so we can go fully resonant? And you can hear how smooth it is. And it's got a very different character. Can we check out other synths like this? Walter says, I get the Italians doing synths, but how did the Polyvoks happen in communist Soviet Republic? It's very interesting, actually. My friend Alexander Yakovlev, who's from Russia, helped me understand and translate this synth. And one of the things he pointed out to me was that the cost of it in rubles from back then is like half a year's salary for an engineer. So this was a very expensive synthesizer. This was not for everybody. And the question from Walter earlier too was talking about the build quality. The Moog Source feels like a tank, like an awesome, really perfect premium machine. And I love everything about it. Like, you do understand when you touch this instrument, you get why Moog commands a premium price. The key bed feels great. The wood sides are gorgeous. Everything about it feels really strong and rugged for the road. I mean, I think this thing was designed for touring musicians, especially. And, you know, it has presets and everything like that. So it's really geared towards that, and you get that sense of quality. The Polyvoks, I love this thing. I love how it looks, but everything about it is very plasticky. and really chunky, not necessarily in a bad way, but especially key beds, very not high quality, not very high premium feeling at all. Somehow that kind of works to the charisma of the synthesizer versus other synths that feel plasticky sometimes feel that like you're just like, oh, this is a cheap 80 synth. This one, for whatever reason, feels more like a, I hope I'm not being insensitive here, but like a control panel from Chernobyl or something. Like it just has that like USSR feel, right? And these giant, it's huge. You might not be able to see on the camera all that well, but it is very large in comparison to the source. They're about as wide as each other, but the panel of this is the same size as the whole synth. And yeah, it's built into this rugged case. I mean, it feels pretty tough as well. But yeah. Polyvoks is used by Goldfrapp, Franz Ferdinand. It was used by Mick Gordon for the Doom soundtracks. It was used by whoever did the Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever that game's called soundtrack. It's used by a lot of musicians, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. When people talk about desert island synths, this is the only desert island mono synth that I would keep. There's just something so unique to the way this synth sounds that I think sounds amazing and unique. But actually shooting them out right now, so far as the oscillators go, they're almost identical. I mean, I wouldn't really know much of a difference. Yeah. So, yeah, it's very... Machine Storm, welcome to the stream. Utilitarian design, exactly. Johnny, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So, yeah, there's that. Let's check out the resonance on the Polyvoks here. So it gets this incredible distorted character. Now it's going to go insane soon. You hear it just pop in, so watch your ears. I'll actually turn the volume down a little bit here. Turn the volume down all the way down here. Yeah, it's really intense. So this synthesizer is probably the only synthesizer that I have that I feel like can do acid bass without any distortion added. Like it just immediately kind of goes into that territory. And I don't have any of the clones of the Polyvoks filter from Erica Synths and so forth. So I really couldn't tell you. That might be something I should do at some point, is get one of those filters and see how they compare. I really couldn't say how that compares, but I just think that this filter is very good. Another thing this filter can do that the Moog source can't is it can actually be a bandpass filter as well. So you kind of get that like high passed. You make some really cool sounds like that. Or if you go back to low pass, yeah, it just sounds pretty incredible. Let's see. Walter says, I do wonder about what a Polyvoks looks like on the inside. I imagine everything is made in the USSR and it's not SU-27 green like everything made in there at that time. Yeah. Autumn says, Z wanted me to tell you he built a cool wooden ant tonight. It's awesome, Z. Love a cool wooden ant. I could use a cool wooden ant right here on the wall. I would love that. So yeah, that's something that we can do over here that's not necessarily possible on the source, or isn't possible at all. There's nothing like that. Let's talk about a couple more things here real quick. One is we have a noise source on the synth. So I'm just going to turn the oscillators off real quick and mix in noise. It's noise. I don't know what you want me to tell you about that. Let's go ahead and turn the emphasis all the way off, and then oscillator 1 and 2 all the way off. And see, it's very easy to edit. I think people get like really freaked out about the 1 knob per function, but look how quickly I did all of that. Here's the noise on the source. More of like a pink noise. And I wonder if you guys are hearing this. I'm sure you synth snobs are. Can I get some scum snobs in the chat? That there's this periodic thing going on with the noise, like a sort of sound. Do you hear that? That's because one of the only digital things about the signal path in the source, only major differences, I guess I should say. So let me back up and say this. I apologize, but the Moog source is the replacement of the Minimoog. It is a Minimoog, and in fact, people who were working on the line making Minimoogs in 1980, when they started making sources, they used the same parts from those Minimoogs that weren't complete and put them directly into the new sources. So unlike every other Moog synth that you see floating around on Reverb, this truly is a Minimoog in most senses of the phrase. There are things that are different about it. For instance, you have full ADSRs on this synthesizer. You don't have that on a Minimoog. You only have 3 stages instead of 4. So there's actually things that elevate this, not just because it's got a sequencer and arpeggiator, it's got programmable memory. Those are all the obvious things, but it really is as close as you're going to get to a Minimoog, aside from buying a $10,000 Minimoog or a $5,000 new one if you don't care about vintage necessarily. So it's very, very close. But one area where they did cheap out, and I think it really hurts it, is in the noise. So the noise is actually a digital sample of noise. So you can hear this little thing in there versus analog noise. To match the tone, we could just lower the filter a little bit. Really, that's not going to help too much. Just not as much high end on this. More of a pink noise. More of a bright noise character to it. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing. That one little change they put in there, and I think they didn't think anybody would notice, but you know, if you were trying to make like techno percussion, hi-hat sound, stuff like that with a synthesizer, I think it does matter. There is a, play the filter oscillator-less noise patch in the source, which we'll check out soon. And that shows that once you're doing that sort of a thing, you really don't notice that at all. And we do have key tracking on this synth, the source, which we don't have. We've got off, half, and full, which is great. That's kind of all I really need. There's something to be said for fully variable key tracking, but there's a lot of analog synths that have that, but it's very hard to tune it perfectly to the notes. I'd rather it be able to be tuned perfectly to the notes. So if I hit the full button, that does that, and I think that's great. So anyways, I think that's most of what's going on with the filter here. Let's talk about the envelopes briefly. So we'll just listen to the filter envelope first, because the sustain or loudness contour, as it's called on the source, is going to be basically the same thing. By the way, guys, am I causing the camera to lock onto my beautiful arm, my triceps of gold here, or am I standing far enough out of the way that it's not a problem? You guys let me know. Let's see. Walter says, can you tell us how to score both? The fact that the Polyvoks is a Soviet made blows my mind. What a journey it made to my studio. Yeah, and I actually got this one from Ukraine at the start of the war. So it was quite a battle. Actually, it was not as simple as you would think. Reverb was not down to authorize the payment, but I wasn't going to go outside of Reverb. You never should. I've mentioned this in my videos before. If someone's like, hey, just make a direct payment from outside of Reverb or eBay, don't do it, because the thing is that even if they mean well, they could not mean well. And if you make a payment and it's outside of Reverb or eBay, then it's not covered. Right? Even if you found them through Reverb and eBay. But in this case, it was just truly that you couldn't, banks were frozen and shit over in Ukraine. So it took a while, and I explained the situation to Reverb, and they talked to him, and they got it all set up so they could get a bank account where I could get the money for this bad boy over to him. And I'm so glad I did, because it's one of the coolest synths. And usually I look up the prices of these synths before the streams. Forgot to do it today. I'm not perfect, as is evidenced routinely in front of your very eyes, but these puppies go for somewhere around $2,400 a pop, and these go for sometimes as cheap as about $1,200. So I would highly recommend looking into the Polyvoks, especially. The Moog, here's my thing about Moogs. There's people who love Moogs, and then there's people who are like not that impressed by Moogs. And I'm a little bit more in the second category, where I love what Moog stood for. And I love, everything about the culture of Moogs and the quality. But as far as the sound goes, I don't know that it commands the premium price tag. In particular, Moog, ARP, and sequential synths from back in the day are just going to command really high prices for what they are. Oberheim's too. I think it's because they were big American companies. So as far as vintage synths, Japanese synths are usually a better buy. Something like the Soviet synth, I think, is very cool. Yeah. So anyways, Johnny asks, which one has the better keys, feels? 100% that would be the Moog Source. So if you like playing keys, the Moog Source definitely feels 10 times better. This is very plasticky. This just feels great. Yeah, you can really hear that periodic thing. Weird sort of low tone to it. I don't know why they messed that up. Anyways, let's turn that off and turn the oscillators back on. And we'll do the same thing over here. See, it takes almost the same amount of time, slightly slower on this, but not by much. Let's listen to the filter now. So one of my favorite ways to test this out is just to go to filter contour and do 50-50-50, right? So what I'm doing is 50 attack, 50 decay, 0 sustain, 0 release, contour amount 100%, and cut off all the way down. And we're going to do the exact same thing over here on this synth. So we'll put the attack to 50, decay to 50, sustain all the way down, release all the way down, bring the filter all the way down, and the amount or the filter envelope amount all the way up. Done that very quickly on both, and now we can hear how it sounds. It'll be interesting. So at 50%, you can hear the sources much faster. It's kind of crazy that there's room in there. So we can get really snappy if I turn the attack all the way down. What a big difference there is actually in terms of really snappy. We can take this decay all the way down. I mean, at 25%, that's barely the sound of the gate opening and closing. So I think this is proof that this is not one of the knocks you'll get against digital synths, digital analog synths like the JX3P, where the envelopes are digitally created or something like that. So it's an analog synth, analog amplifier, but the envelope is digital. This does not appear to be the case here, because at 25%, it's still crazy snappy. Yeah, just really intense. So let's slow it down. I almost have to bring up the cutoff. It seems like the cutoff can dig a little deeper on the Polyvoks, go a little lower. See how we still have some, a little of that fundamental in there? A little bit, and there's just more distortion built into the overall signal path here. Machine Storm, that's interesting. Hey Jaden, welcome to the stream. Wow, it sounds really, the source sounds really great with the resonance all the way down. It does sound very, very good. So bringing the attack up to about 75 here. Versus if we bring the attack up here to about, I'm guessing 75. Again, the Polyvoks can just go slower. Real quick here, I want to see how tight we can get the envelope. So with, I guess what I'm saying is sorry about the mic once again, but with the decay all the way down on the Polyvoks, we actually have, we actually have slower envelopes than the source at 25%, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. I don't know why they needed to make the envelope so snappy on the source. I'm curious if we'll have the opposite problem where the envelopes don't go slow enough. So why don't we check that out real quick? We'll put it all the way up to 99 and see what happens with maximum attack, maximum decay on both synths. Pretty slow, pretty good. Over on the Polyvoks. So this is fascinating. So even though this at the 50% mark, the Polyvoks is slower in attack and decay, the source can actually go slower than the Polyvoks on its maximum setting. So what I'm guessing is that the way that attack and decay is contoured, it's pretty snappy around the 50% mark, but then it starts to get more and more slow as we keep going, which I think is pretty cool, actually, and kind of scores points for the source here. I would say that the source actually kind of wins that. The ladder filter versus the filter built into the Polyvoks, I think that's going to be a preference thing. I don't really know that I can comment on. I can tell you which one I prefer. I prefer a filter that has a lot of bass in it, so I can do really badass bass lines, and it's also switchable to bandpass, which is pretty cool. Let's just do that real quick just to show that off. Get those wonderful fizzy vowel-y type tones in there. But for some other people, you know, when you think about a ladder filter that loses low end and you're cutting off the high end, right, because it's a low pass filter, that's kind of a bandpass filter if you think about it. So let's increase the emphasis a bit and see how close it gets. It's kind of like a bandpass filter. But again, the Polyvoks, the filter's just so driven that you're going to get a different type of sound with this, for better or worse. Okay, so have we missed anything? Yes, we have. So there is one thing that we haven't talked about on the Polyvoks that you can't do on the source. If I put this, right now it's in a single shot of the envelope. Let's just, but what we can do is we can loop that. So these loopable envelopes are super cool, especially for the filter, because we can actually, by controlling that decay amount, we can speed this up. And we can take it almost to audio rate. really just take it into a new territory as far as it's just a really incredible feature of this synthesizer that's not possible on the Source. So that's another thing that I'm a really big fan of. Something to think about. Moving on, we do have different trigger modes, so we can go for like more of a legato or every time you hit the note, you get the same, like a sharp re-triggering of the filter and the amplifier. Whereas over here, I don't believe we can do that. Let's see what else we have. We do have portamento on both. What's interesting about the portamento on my Polyvox, I feel like it needs to get tuned up. If I increase it, you'll hear, probably easier if I put it in low pass, that the two oscillators don't move in perfect. They get a little off, so that's an interesting thing. Whereas if we increase keyboard glide over here, put in a multi-trigger, versus single trigger, versus multi-trigger, yeah, so that's kind of that difference again where you have a little bit more flexibility. So it's kind of like a back and a forth as far as the features go, where you start going, okay, the Source kind of has better envelopes than the Polyvox, but you can't loop them, right? And the Polyvox has a better sounding filter to me, but this one's very clean. I mean, it's kind of one of those things when you listen to just the oscillators and a filter sweep, Polyvox probably beats it out. To my ears anyways. I mean, it's up to everybody. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it sounds better? Like, of the two, which filter would you prefer? To finish my thought though, once you start playing with it, like with a little portamento, like that's awesome. What a cool lead sound, that's very vowely, and I don't know that we could really replicate that. It's just a different kind of thing. One thing, though, to consider, and you can hear like just the volume difference too, we lose a lot of volume. I guess we're really just losing bass, but you feel like you're losing volume here. Aquatic says, you almost get like a stereo effect from the oscillators. I agree. Welcome to the stream, Infindebula. That Polyphonic glide sounds fantastic. I don't think I'd ever want to fix that, but if you must, the problem is probably a capacitor whose value has changed. Yeah. Leads, ladder, bass, poly. Yeah, I agree with that, Nick. That's probably about right. And why there might be an argument for both of them. This is my favorite, like, industrial EBM bassline type synth. This is where it's at. This thing sounds incredible. But this might be better for medium resonance sort of lead sounds because it'll just cut through a mix a little bit better. So that might be kind of where you want to go with it. Another thing that we can do with the oscillators on the Polyvox that you can do on an ARP Odyssey, but you can't do on any Moog synth that I'm aware of, is it is a duophonic synth. So we've got one run and two runs, and sometimes you want two runs in your life. I'm going to turn the portamento all the way off. So now we can play, it sounds so good. Gingy, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Regal, welcome. How's it going? Yeah, the resonance is just crazy. So, okay. I forgot who I was talking to about it. It was one of you wonderful scum out there. But the discussion basically went something like, duophonic was cool at the time, but nowadays it's kind of pointless. And I do agree with that. Like, once polyphonic synths were a thing, duophony just became like, what's the point? Because it's running a couple of voices through the same filter. You could just kind of get a polysynth, right? And play actual chords. For what it's worth, it's you know, it is a thing. The Odyssey could do it. We can do it here. I suppose too that I guess if we use a lot of cross mod, we could sort of get into the neighborhood of some of that like Arb Odyssey stuff, but I don't personally know that I can get there even if I crank the range up. Maybe that's good for like sci-fi effects, right? But for me personally, it's kind of cool like on one note, but if I turn that off, you can hear. That's just kind of whatever. I don't know. You know, that's how that is. Yes. Let's see. Loving the what everybody's saying. The Polyvox has a wild sound. Yeah, that's what I like about it. It's a little unpredictable. It's a little strange. And that helps take it out of being just like every other synth that you have. What else can we do here? So we've covered the filter. We've covered the oscillators. I think we've covered them pretty well. Again, we can sync the oscillators on the source. So why don't we do that real quick? Let's turn the emphasis all the way down and the cutoff all the way up. It takes forever. I think there is a way to do it faster, something I've just kind of forgotten about it, but we can sync the oscillators, which won't make too much of a difference until we change the oscillator range. So we can kind of get like a kind of electro type thing. Right, versus if I just bring up you can hear the tuning's a little bit different now. Yeah, so that's a thing you can do, but I don't know if there's any way to route let's see here. There are a couple of things you can do because we have a whole sequencer in here built in. Sample and hold. We can do that. Auto trigger, external trigger. So we have an external trigger that we can run in, but I don't see any way that we can sweep the pitch other than like... So we can get sort of, you know, those classic rock type sounds. We drop the... It's almost like pulse width mod on a sawtooth wave, so that's kind of cool. Hard sync type sound, but there's no way to do it automatically. And then there's no way to do it at all on the Polyvox. We got the cross mod, but we don't have sync. We have sync on the Moog source, but no way to modify that. What else can we do? We can use the LFO to both of these. So if I increase the LFO to both voices, you can hear. Gets pretty crazy pretty quick. Right, conversely on the source, a lot less crazy. Then we can control the rate here. So why don't we just check that out real quick. we can take it to audio rate, but the depth isn't so great. And all we really have control over is to the filter mod and to the oscillator, but this controls the amount, the mod wheel. And also, by the way, just like an authentic Minimoog, and not like in the recreation, the most recent recreation, the pitch wheel is not spring-loaded at all. So that's just wherever you put it, which is an interesting thing. We don't have any pitch or mod wheel over here, though, so yeah. Let's see. I agree, Gingy. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if there's a firmware update for either of these guys, actually, because these are basically analog synths. There's a little bit of some computer stuff going in here, but mostly just to store the patch memory. But anyways, let's consider to the, if we turn off to oscillator, right, and we can turn sync off, but we can run it to the filter mod. And then I think if we turn the cutoff down, oh, there we go. So we can get some pretty cool stuff. Let's try it over here. And let's run that to the filter. We get really slow. Or take it, then it gets very fast, very quick. All the way up to sort of audio rate. Oh, nasty. Walter says pitch bend is for filthy, decadent capitalists. Love it. So yeah, we can run that through. We've got a couple of different options. Square wave. Pretty cool. We can also go to noise, which is very useless. I really don't know why anybody puts this as an option. This was like an option on the CS80 as well that they took off with the CS70M. Noise is a very weird modulation source. Here it just sounds like there's noise in there. What it is noise is being routed as a control voltage to the filter. And I mean, it's not the worst thing, but it's just weird, especially on a vintage synth where that's your only possible mod source. So now you've gotten rid of what you can do for anything. It's just a weird thing. In modular, I could understand it because maybe you just want a little bit to add a little bit of character, because you all have potentially additional modulation sources. But in this case, it's fucking strange. And then we've got sample and hold. Right, so that exists. Now, to do that on the filter over here might take me a second to remember how to do it. we've got these two different levels, and I see level 2 sample and hold filter. Let's bring this contour mount all the way down. It seems like we've successfully created sample and hold to the filter. But it's got a little movement to it, right? It doesn't seem like a clean sample and hold like we have over here. And if I increase the resonance, you can hear it's kind of going all over the place. Oh, I see. We can, that's a separate thing from, wow, that's really interesting. So that's sample and hold for sure. Still follows the LFO rate. Really cool sorts of textures you could get out of this for sure. And then if I just hit this again, that turns it off. Moving back over here. Just so distorted. If we move it over into bandpass mode, baby. We're just going to get a much more distorted sort of sound. Synth theory, I agree when you can slow down the noise, or actually the way to slow down noise as a modulation source counterintuitively is to low pass it, because then you can get sort of like a random drift to the LFO, which I like. But that's not the case here. This is very bright noise as a control source, and it just makes everything sound like noise, which is fine. Let's see. Gingy says the Moog source is microprocessor controlled. Firmware updates may be out there. Yeah, I'm not aware that there's a superior one, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is. Autumn says, okay, got to get the Z-Man ready for bed. Have a wonderful night, Autumn. Thank you so much. Let's see. Roller Coaster Tycoon videos. Anyways, love sample and hold. Another thing I just wanted to say for anybody who wasn't here earlier, it is my birthday this week, and as such, I'm giving away all my products 50% off on my website, vultureculture.live. Link is in the description of this video. The code is birthday in all caps. If you click the link that's in the description of the video, it's automatically applied at checkout, but if you just want to go to vultureculture.live, type it into your browser right now and see if there's anything you like. I do sell Vulture Culture t-shirts. I also sell a preset library for the Roland D50, vintage drum samples that have an industrial edge to them from the Kawai R53, a very rare drum machine from Japan. It was a Japan-only release. And also Inktomi, my chorus and reverb plugin. So you can get all of that 50% off, as much as you want. And, you know, it's a way to help support the channel, but it's also my birthday. So I wanted to give you guys 50% off. It's not Black Friday down here in South Florida. It is my birthday week. So it's for this week only. So next Wednesday, it's over. So it's just, if you're watching this stream now, that's the only time you're going to be able to use the code. So anyways, just want to throw that out there. Yeah, so a lot of fun. Big 3-4 this year. You would think there's more based off of all the white I have in this beard, but c'est la vie. I think I've covered most of the stuff with these synths. I'm trying to think. Cover the LFO. We have tuning here. We have, I forget what this knob does. Oh, we have external input over here. I think we have a trigger input, but not an external input. So we can actually run with this synth, for instance. I've ran the Kwai K3 that I have, or I'm sorry, K1 that I have beneath it directly into it, and then you have an analog filter you can use with the synth. So that's this knob right here. So that's pretty cool. We've got the duophonic mode. Yeah, I think I've covered like the basic stuff. We can route the filter. So let's move this back over to a triangle wave and route that to the amplifier, which actually gets crazy loud. Almost like a square wave. As with noise, interesting. But see, it's just like, I don't really see the purpose of it. But it's a way to add noise, I guess, is different than using it here. Has a little bit of a cool texture to it, but I don't really see it being that useful. But if by increasing the noise into the filter, we have more of that type of sound, right? I do usually have some reverb and stuff on. I usually use my plugin Inktomi, but for this stream I decided not to. I don't know why. Because I fucking do what I want. That's why. So anyways, one of the big features of the Moog Source, kind of the thing it's sold on in 1981, was the fact that it had preset memory. So I just want to go over these real quick. I'm actually going to release some samples of the Moog Source. I asked you guys what you wanted, and people were saying they wanted to have really just great samples. And I thought this was great because it comes with 15 presets plus one that you can use that's sort of like your playground preset, like make your own sounds. But why don't we just go over those real quick, because I think that really shows off how great the synth sounds. So here are some sounds. Oh, I need to go back to level 1. You know, and that little bit of that resonance in there, I think, makes it really nice, and a great lead. Here's another lead patch. Maybe a little lower. And you can hear that even with this little octave switch here, because of this interval control and the footage, we can still get pretty bright sounds. Pretty bright, whatever. Let's just keep going through these presets real quick. Good example of using the resonance and the key tracking. Don't say organ. Moving on to sound 4. Pretty cool, and we could open up that cutoff a little more. Oh, maybe that's using the triangle wave, so never mind. Moving right along to program 5. Could use like a real deep kind of vowely bass sound. It's a shame you lose so much volume, because like I have the volume maxed out here and it's still pretty cool bassline sound actually. Here's a kind of noisy lead type thing. Little pluck. Really gives you that fast thing. Really fast. And with that resonance, you get that, I guess what I would say like that, you know, that sort of, it loses the bass, but I could see that sounding gorgeous in a track. One of my favorite ones, this to me seems like that classic Minimoog sound. And it has that really great character. Resonance is very low. It's off on this one, and that's sort of when it sounds best. How's it going, Hans? Welcome, welcome, welcome. My expander owning friend. This is a really cool one with the oscillators tuned in fifths, and it's really warm sounding. Whoa, it's meaty. Can't even go that low. Probably my favorite sound on this synth just because it's really unique sounding, really great growl. Try some more. That filter does sound really great. Again, it's I don't know what it is. It's like once I've heard a patch and it like the filter grows on me a little bit. But when I'm hearing it on its own, it's very hard for me to fall in love with the ladder filter. But when you hear it here, it's like I think it sounds really wonderful, so it's kind of a funny thing, isn't it? Here's kind of like your nasally thing. I want to see a live stream from you, Hans, on that expander. That would be awesome. Here's this noise patch I was talking about where it's using just the noise and the filter fully resonant keyboard tracking. You really do get that periodic thing, though. I thought I was wrong, but what a shame. But comparing it with the Polyvoks, there's no way to get that sort of sound out of it at all. So, yeah, it's sort of an interesting thing, you know, comparing the two. Nice octave. Great lead. I will say that the Wavestation's leads that we were checking out last week actually are those sorts of brassy type sounds that I like so much, that I associate with like a Moog lead, that I'm not really getting from any of these presets at least. All right, so those are our presets up here. You know, going over real quick, let's try to see if we can create real quick with the Polyvoks. Kind of one of those lead type sounds we were talking about. It's just the distortion's crazy, isn't it? Just, it's so filthy, right? It's very hard to get that, you know. Kev says he picked up the Moog VST from Cherry Audio. Yes, I believe the Moog, just like every other Moog, has that ladder filter in it, the one that they sued ARP over. And so it's going to have that sound, which is super cool. The Moog has MIDI. No, it does not. It has a sequencer, a proprietary sequencer that I do not understand. And by the way, guys, this is the exact synth that New Order recorded Blue Monday with. So they use this. If you want the Blue Monday bassline sound, you got to get a source. And there was an issue with the sequencer, a little bit of trivia, where it was slightly off, like every other bar or something like that. And they actually left it in. They preferred the sound where there's this slight inconsistency. Polivoks did not ship with MIDI, but I've had MIDI installed on this. And that also helps make it useful because it's really fun to use it in that way. So yeah, that's kind of the difference there. There used to be a MIDI kit for the source, but I don't think you can get them anymore, which is a shame because I would love to have this synth MIDI controlled as well. This is like a really fast. We go with a. We can get something like that. Yeah, I suck at playing too, Hans, if that's not obvious. So, yeah, I think I've compared the two of them, at least the sound of both of them, pretty decently. Covered more or less all of the features and stuff. So I'm going to move the stream back on over to the computer here and ask you guys what you think about the two synths. I like to do this on these Versus streams. Actually, go check out the opinion on both of these. So I'm going to just go pull this up and do a poll like I like to do. So let's start a poll here. I a lot of the times like to be like, well, you know, for the money, which do you think is better? Because I'm big into getting value for beginners. But in this case, I think it's kind of more just a choice as far as, you know, which do you prefer the sound of? I think people who are into the Polivoks or the Source, they're the types of people who are going to, let me just drag this over here so I can see this. Okay, there we go. They're the type of people who are buying, these are not like, these are not, what's the phrase I'm looking for? When it's like something that a jack of all trades isn't it exactly, but they're not synths that necessarily, to me anyways, they don't stand out as being synths that you would use for all things, or that a beginner would buy because they're like, okay, I'm going to buy one vintage synth, right? I don't really think that's the case. I think both of these synths have a reputation for being very specific flavors, very, you know, very unique sorts of sounds. And so therefore, Swiss Army knife. That's it. They are not Swiss Army knife synths. It's a very different thing to compare, say, the JX3P and the Kwai SX240, for instance. In that case, I really think a judgment there, because they're very similar, is going to kind of come down to what does the synth add in terms of value for the money you're going to spend on it in the vintage market, right? You know, it's so easy to sort of get gear acquisition syndrome just by listening to demos of these synths on their own. The reason I do the Versus videos is they help me think about the synths. I would say that this one, I didn't really change my opinion as much. Usually when I do these videos, go into it with a certain opinion, like say the Matrix versus the JX3P. I was team JX3P. By the end of the stream, I was like, damn it, the Matrix 6 sounds good, you know? So Kev says, I might try building a Ceruthi Polyvox kit. You can still get them, but they are made by third party and called Phoenix now. Super cool. Yeah. Han says, I don't know much about the Source, but as much as I love my Polyvox, I have trouble using it sometimes. Yeah. I think having MIDI for the Polyvox is really useful for doing like EBM bass lines. It's like my go-to. And it sounds great as a lead too, but I would say the Source sort of makes more sense as a lead synth just because of the way it can be. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a couple more minutes to vote. Walter said probably get more mileage out of the Source. It's interesting. Certainly, if you planned on using it in like a live situation, the Source is going to be useful because it has patch memory, right? So the Source kind of pioneered patch memory, and then the Memory Moog came out and was kind of like the only poly synth that was truly a poly synth Moog put out that had patch memory too. So it was almost like the playground or testing ground for the Memory Moog was the Source. Like, let's try and see if we can do it with one voice, and then we'll replicate it up and do a full poly synth. Yeah. I played a Waldorf Pulse over the web recently. Pretty cool site. Plays hardware real time and lets you sequence and pass the audio to you over web. Yeah, that's super cool. I've seen some stuff like that. I could see using that even in a studio context, like as a recording, as a producer, when I'm recording a vocalist or something. It'd be nice to just send that vocalist through like an authentic LA2A or something, but I don't want to actually buy one, right? Because they're so fucking expensive. So, yeah. It is such a shame about mutable instruments, Kev. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. And 73% of you preferred the sound of the Polyvox, which I think is super interesting. Super interesting. Although, considering that you guys are my people, I think I prefer the Polyvox 73% of the time, more or less. So that kind of makes sense. So yeah, very cool. But also, you know, for me, if I'm being completely honest, and I wouldn't say my opinions changed too much after this stream, if you can get okay, two layers to my thoughts here. If you can get a Source right now, I think that's not a bad idea, because sometimes you see them going for kind of cheap, and when it comes to InMusic's takeover of Moog, I feel like vintage Moogs are going to go up in price, and right now the vintage market is depressed. It got overinflated, and now prices have came down. What sucks is most of us don't have a lot of extra money lying around right now. But if you do, and you want to buy a vintage synth, the hard truth is this is probably the time, because the prices are probably about as low as they're going to get, and then they're going to go back up again soon. So it's not a bad time to buy a vintage synth. And if you're talking from a purely financial point of view, buying a Moog right now might be a good idea. If you could get a really good price on something like this, or a Prodigy is the other synth that I've been interested in. They usually go a little cheaper than the Source. It doesn't have a noise source, so that's a thing, but people really like the Prodigies as well. Walter says US-made Moog is going to blow into a bubble. I don't know if what we're saying is the same thing, but if I think it's going to be the case. If you can get one while you can, that's probably going to be good, and maybe a reason for me to hold on to my source, even though for me I'm much more excited about polysynths most of the time. I do think it's worth probably holding on to the source if nothing else, just because it will be worth a lot. And they're both great synths. That's the thing about these versus streams. Sometimes they rub people the wrong way, but for me, it's a celebration of both synths. It's sort of hearing the strengths and weaknesses, and there were strengths and weaknesses on both. But considering you can usually get a Polyvoks very cheap, if you can get it, because they're hard to get from, they're usually hanging out in Eastern Europe, so that can be a little bit of a problem. But even with shipping and everything, you can still get them pretty cheap, and if you can, it's a good thing. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. I really love that. You're welcome, Rich. I really love the Polyvoks. For me, it's just a very industrial sounding synth. It's just got so much grit and grime. It's really just got this character to it. But the Moogs can sound really clean. You know, the Polyvoks, I think maybe the problem is it always sounds distorted. Like it's really does have that thing. I love that, but it's not applicable for all every situation. So wild vibes. Yes, I agree with that, Aquatic. So yeah, just to conclude, if you're watching this stream using the code birthday in all caps at vultureculture.live, you can get everything I sell for 50% off this week only. Get a Vulture Culture t-shirt if you don't have one yet. I've got a couple of them. One that says Filthy Scum, sort of VHS retro vibes. Thank you, Anna. And I've also got one that's just got the Vulture Culture logo big and bold. And then also Inktomi, my Chorus Reverb plugin, 50% off. Diodes and Rust, my vintage industrial drum samples, 50% off. And of course, Neon Chronicles, my Roland D50 library, 50% off this week only. Just want to kind of give back to people, for everybody who's been watching this channel. I know pretty much everybody here has already bought the stuff, so I appreciate you guys paying a full price. You know, you guys are awesome, and I really can't say thank you enough. This is just kind of like a special thing I wanted to do to celebrate my birthday this year, and it's this week only. So if you're watching this video in the future, I'm sorry, but discount's not going to be there for you. Unless it's just this week. So I appreciate it, Gingy. Polyvoks probably has very low tolerances compared to the Moog. Yeah, that's probably the case. So anyways, guys, love and light, bitches. I am out.